Started recording yet?
I have started.
Right,
I
welcome
will be
everybody.
the grammarian tonight.
What was that?
I will be the grammarian tonight,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and we're missing an evaluator.
Yep, we're missing Ron.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Oh, there's
Okay.
Ron. Yay! And we're missing Steve.
Just in the nick of time.
I was looking down when someone wanted to be grammarian. Who was that?
Eric.
Eric.
Eric. Okay, thanks, Eric.
Okay, do we have all the roles covered tonight?
Yeah. Yeah. Now we do.
Okay, perfect. Welcome everybody to the, what is this? The September 28th already combined Cascade Speakeasy and Electric Toasters meeting. I can't wait to hear what we're going to talk about tonight in our table topics with this topic of COVID, but and other side effects. It reminds me a lot of some of the titles that one of my favorite author often writes about, which is Patrick McManus. He has all these books. I've got a whole shelf full of them, and they're short stories, and they're little titles very similar to that theme. And they crack me up, and I expect tonight's going to crack me up as well. With that, let's get going. Rob, do you have a flag for us to salute tonight?
I do, Mr. President. If everyone would kindly mute themselves, focus on my screen and my voice, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Rob.
Hello.
Are you gonna be grammarian, Steve?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was caught up on a business call and I couldn't get ripped loose. I finally had to hang up on him. I'll happily hang on to my grammarian role if it didn't get given away.
You're in.
Okay.
All right, with that, we've got a full house, a full agenda, and Pat is our Toastmaster for the evening. Pat, would you take it away?
Hi, everybody. Good evening, and I hope everyone has had a really good day. I'm happy to see that Jackie is awake, considering that it's the middle of the night there in London. We've had a beautiful day today, weather-wise. It's nice to have no smoke and no fog and no rain and no dreariness, so we should enjoy it while it goes on. There are no program changes because Steve showed up, so I don't have to report on that. But we've been trying to start with the joke of the day. And as somebody who went to Catholic school all the way up through the second year of college, I went to a Catholic women's college, a very progressive one in my younger days. I came across a joke today that has quasi-religious overtones. So here's my joke for the day. A Sunday school teacher asked her class, "Does anyone here know what we mean by sins of omission?" A small girl replied, "Aren't those the sins we should have committed but didn't?" So I'm wondering, does anybody else want to sin and share a joke with us this evening besides me? Anybody? Okay, Steve, go ahead.
So the other day, I saw these two pigs. They fell in the mud and 3 came out. I heard that like in 4th grade. 2 pigs fell in the mud, 3 came out. Dirty joke.
Oh, okay. Now that we've dabbled in humor, I'm kind of interested in our theme for tonight. COVID, but, and other side effects. That's going to be interesting when we get around to that. I don't know where that's going to take us. I'm sure it will be something tasteful and elegant nonetheless. And it kind of goes along with the pig joke, doesn't it? Okay, the general evaluator for tonight is Joyce. So Joyce, would you like to explain your role and introduce us to your team so that we can know who's out there?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Thank you so much, Pat. I am the general evaluator, which means I will be evaluating the entire meeting. Do not worry, the taps in the phone are there for a reason. Let us help you learn how to do a meeting. As for the evaluator, let me step back. I have looked at the team of unpaid professionals, and I have to say we are in for a treat tonight. Evaluator Ron is going to tell us the speech objectives. Ron?
Oh, thank you. So I think I'm going to read what Jackie sent me because she did such a great job putting it together. One of the things that surprises me about this speech, it's 18 to 22 minutes long. It's the last on level 5 of the presentation mastery pathway titled Preparing to Speak Professionally. This has been Jackie's aim in becoming a better speaker through Toastmasters, to give professional keynote concerts a blend of speaking and original music on the topic of abuse awareness. Tonight you'll be treated to a blend of speaking and music as Jackie gives a condensed version of her full keynote concert. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 1/3 of all women experience intimate partner violence and abuse, and men experience it as well. With this in mind, you're encouraged to listen to the presentation through the lens of the audience who has either experienced personal abuse or who knows someone who has. I'll look forward to evaluating this speech at the end. Back to you, Madam Evaluator.
Thank you. If we didn't have a timer, it certainly would not be a Toastmasters meeting, would it? No. We have a professional tonight, medal in the background and all. Please introduce myself to Mary Syrie.
Thank you. Thank you, Joyce. I am the timer tonight, and I'll be keeping track of where we are in the speeches, evaluation, and our table topics. Jackie's speech is 18 to 20 minutes at 22 minutes, I should say, at there. 18 minutes, I'll show the green background. At 20 minutes, I'll show the yellow background. At 22 minutes, I'll show the red background. When we approach table topics, we will see a green background at 1 minute, yellow at 1.5 minutes, red at 2 minutes. For the speech evaluator, we will see a green screen at 2 minutes, at 2.5 minutes, yellow, 3 minutes, red. Thank you.
Fantastic. And may I just say that it reminds me so much of Sesame Street to see the colors in the background. It takes me back. Grammarian, we almost didn't have our Mr. Grammarian tonight. I'm so glad you showed up. Steve, tell us the word of the night, please.
Thank you so much. My job as grammarian is to keep track of everyone's speaking skills and use of the English language. And I don't think my sharing just came up, did it? Am I hogging up the screen right now?
Yeah, we see the
That's
Zoom.
not it. Where did it go? Let's try that one more time. In addition to identifying good and bad use of the English language, I'll introduce to you today the word of the day to expand your vocabulary, enriching your opportunity to communicate with others effectively. Zoonotic is a disease. It goes with the COVID pandemic. It is an infectious disease caused by a pathogen, such as an infectious agent, virus in particular, that has jumped from a non-human animal to a human. I'll keep track of the use of the language and the opportunities for everyone to plug in zoonotic. I'm sure I'll have a plethora of uses this evening. Thank you.
Sorry, I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to use that in a sentence. I will at least one time tonight, as Kat is my witness. We could not go forth without the counter, the devil's advocate of the meeting. I usually feel like one when I have that role. Ian, please tell us what you're going to be up to tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. General Evaluator. Sorry, couldn't come up with that term, that title. I am going to be holding my very favorite role of Toastmasters. It's to count all of the small verbal discrepancies we make as we speak. A lot of little words like and other words that are sometimes just sloppy. For instance, there was a word earlier tonight where the speaker said "ta" instead of "to." So I'm counting on things like that, and I'll give my full report at the end of the evening.
I have a feeling that might have been me. I'm going to pass the torch to Miss Pat.
Well, it is my pleasure to introduce Jackie Graybill, who is giving a speech in the last of level 5, which is Presentation Mastery Pathways. She's going to be talking about a very delicate, serious subject, abuse awareness, but she's going to present using music as well as speech. So this should be an exciting adventure for all of us. I give you Jackie.
Jackie, you're on mute. I was so ready. Okay. Thanks.
There are moments that shape our lives that we later look back on as the moments that changed everything. I wonder if you have experienced any of these moments. September 15th, 2017. I woke up without opening my eyes, and I thought back to another morning not so long in the past. Was I even the same person? The girl who woke up on January 23rd, 2016, she was nervous, she was excited, a bit naive and trusting, and she was so sure that her future held something specific. She knew what it was going to be because this was her wedding day. Have you ever been in a position where you were so sure of what was going to happen, and then things fell apart? What she didn't know on her wedding morning was that she was about to marry a man who was wearing a mask, and not the coronavirus kind of mask. He was masking his true personality and intentions. He wasn't Dracula, but she was marrying an energy vampire. This is a phrase that was coined by Dr. Christiane Northrup. And she uses it to describe toxic cluster B personality disordered individuals. She says, fully 1 in 5 people, male and female, have vampire characteristics or are full-blown cluster Bs. These are people with antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorders, as well as sociopaths and psychopaths. And it's worth mentioning that narcissistic personality disorder is kind of like a Russian doll, and that it can fit into any of the other personality types. So you could be that and a narcissist. The number that Ron mentioned earlier from the World Health Organization, that 1/3 of all women experience intimate partner violence and abuse. When we think about 1 in 5 people being an abuser and engaging in that cycle of abuse with their victims, it makes sense that 1 in 3 women would experience that with an intimate partner, as well as men. Men also experience this. I heard someone say once that it's as if you were punctured in the center of your being with a metaphoric straw, and your abuser is sucking the life energy out of you in a very parasitic way. You might be like me on my wedding morning, not knowing how to spot an abuser. You would be forgiven for not recognizing them because of the masks they wear. But I would love to give you some clues so you might be able to recognize these people who are in your life. A, because I'm going to give you the ABCs of abusers. A is for anger. This is not the type of anger that we have towards coronavirus and the circumstances that we're in and just this frustration. This is a different kind of anger. This is the type of anger where you go from 0 to 60 like that. And it's because you don't get your way or somebody else does not react how you want them to react. This reminds me of a little baby sitting in a high chair, throwing a tantrum because they're not getting their way. Incidentally, the man I married, I would go on to call Boss Baby because he was very much like that little baby throwing a tantrum, getting angry when anything did not go his way. B, when this happens, they blame. They will blame other people for everything wrong in their lives. They don't take personal responsibility for anything. And along with that, they hate boundaries because boundaries keep them from their main goal, the thing that is at the heart of everything that they do. C, for control. A for anger, B for blame and boundaries, and C for control. Over the course of my marriage, I experienced many kinds of abuse and control in the areas of financial, spiritual, even related to food, sexual, emotional, and the beginnings of physical. I found it so interesting that emotional abuse is at the heart of all abuse in that it starts with emotional before it goes along the spectrum to the violent side. I asked my aunt, who was in a 20-year abusive marriage, I said, Aunt Vicki, how long into your marriage was it that the emotional abuse turned into physical abuse? And she said, it was 2 years. So often they go from their mask to the emotional abuse into the physical. I would be spun round and round on this cycle of abuse from the honeymoon stage to the tension building phase to the explosion phase and all over again. I opened my eyes, stretched a little bit, and I rolled over on my bed. Except it wasn't my bed. It belonged to the domestic violence shelter where I was living. I felt better on this morning than I had on my wedding day. I felt better than I had since my wedding day because for the first time since then, I felt safe. I felt protected. Have you ever had that experience where you're in this tumultuous thing and then all of a sudden you came to this place of peace? That was what it was like for me. It was like a boulder was rolled off my shoulder. Even though I was in a teeny tiny little twin bed, even though I had to take a roll of toilet paper with me every time I went to the bathroom, and even though I was technically homeless, I was at peace. 5 weeks prior to this, I left him. 3 days prior to this, he stalked me to a restaurant where I was having dinner with an old friend who he knew. And I would later find out that the scene that he made when he walked in was so terrible that the waiter nearly called the police. He came in like a twister, like a Tennessee twister, in all of its fury. And when he got to our table, it was as if he transformed into a boiling pot of fondue, because we were at the melting pot, that splashed over and scalded everyone in its path with his anger, with his explosion, with his blame, and with his control. It was terrifying, but now I was here at the shelter and I was at peace. Later that day, I was unpacking the things from my car and taking them into the little room at the shelter. And while I was doing this, I was being careful to reach into the corners and just double check that there was nothing extra there. I even had a police officer check my car, and he said, "There's no tracker." When I got close to the end, I reached under my passenger seat and I felt something soft. I pulled it out and I was looking down at a black velvet drawstring bag. I opened it up and I pulled out a plastic disc about that thick. I turned it over and I read land, air, sea. I grabbed my pocket, pulled out my burner phone, and found Google. Typed in land, air, sea. And then I started shaking. What I saw was almost as terrifying as seeing him in that restaurant. I put the tracker down on my seat, and shaking, I hurried in to the office of my caseworker. At this point, I was starting to have a panic attack. I was completely freaking out because at this point, he was threatening that peace. Here's how. If there was a tracker, then all of the other women were not safe. All of the other women and their children, because he could track to the shelter. I was handed a little bottle of essential oils that I screwed open, and my caseworker said, "Here, take a smell, I'll go get it." And I tried to calm my breathing as I inhaled lavender as much as I could, and I tried to calm down. She came back into the office holding the tracker, and she said, "Come on, let's get in my car." We drove out far into the country, and we spotted a house that was being built. No one was there because it was in the process of being built, and there was a giant green dumpster. We traveled along the gravel path, and we came to a stop. I grabbed the tracker, I stepped out, I reared back, and I chucked that thing as hard as I could into that dumpster. And I may or may not have given it the only middle finger I have ever given in my life. Because what that meant to me was I had my peace back. That safety that had evaporated like a million pieces came back to me as we drove back to the domestic violence shelter. my experience has showed me interesting things about abuse, things that I am studying right now at my university. One of the interesting things that I found was a statistic from the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And it says that there are an average of 7 times that an abuse victim will go back to their abuser before the final time that they leave. And I've thought a lot about that statistic because I didn't go back once. And it made me think, what was it about my situation that was so different, that kept me from being, it's called being hoovered back into that abusive situation. What was it about my situation that was different? And I come up with 3 different things, and I'd like to share them with you. The first one is say sayonara. These are all going to start with S's, just so you know. Say sayonara means doing something called no contact. When I first came to the shelter, they said, you were going to need to go no contact with your abuser. And what this meant was I sent him an email which said, do not contact me or come around me for any reason or purpose, or there will be legal ramifications. Not all abusers will follow that, but I was lucky that mine did. The second, which is so vital, is seek support. You may have experienced an abusive person in your life, or you may know someone who is going through it. With a statistic like 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 people being abusive, I would guess that you have known someone who has gone through this. They may have gone back 2 times, 5 times, whatever it is. But if you're talking to this person, I want to give you some advice for them. Be supportive. It's so easy to get frustrated, especially when you don't know all the ins and outs and you think, why is this person going back? This is so frustrating. And the tendency may be to pull back your support, but they need it more than ever. I was lucky to have an amazing therapist and friends and family who, when I dipped my toe out into sharing what was going on, they were supportive. They didn't totally understand, but they were supportive. You don't have to know everything. Just give them your support. This is so important because you may be the difference in saving somebody's life. Because maybe if they had gone back one more time, their cycle would have ended with their life. So be supportive if you can at all. The last is to engage in self-care. One of the things that my caseworker would ask me at the end of each week's meeting, where we worked on all these practical things, she would say to me, Jackie, what is one thing you are going to do for you this week? So I want to pose this as a challenge to you. In these coronavirus times, I want you to take a piece of paper out, or if you don't have any paper, you can put it in the chat. Grab a pen, grab a nice fat pen, or write big, and I want you to share something that you can do for yourself. This could be something little. One thing that I did, I gave myself the little luxury of once a week going to a salon and having somebody wash and style my hair. It was something that made me feel a little bit of normalcy. I would love to see what you have come up with. So if you would, maybe even put your screen in gallery view and show us what is the one thing that you are going to do. It may be a little thing like Mary says, wear perfume to make you feel a little more like yourself. Joyce says chocolate. Fantastic. Let's see what else, if we have anything else in the chat. Not quite yet. Beer. Yes. I'm not a beer person, but I can absolutely appreciate that. And somehow I think Ron is saying, yes, beer. And if it's in a pub, so much the better. Walk from Ian, fantastic. It's a great way to get, especially there's no cloudiness. Friday night walk from Eric and Christina. Steve, what does yours say? Back up just a little bit. More beer. More beer. I sense a theme here, you guys. I will say I had some amazing cider at a pub on Sunday. Football from Rob to everyone. Maybe a Seahawks fan. These are some little things that we can do for ourselves, for some self-care. One of the things that I did was I did a lot of journaling, but also because I'm a songwriter and I was in Nashville to do songwriting, was I wrote music about what I had experienced. I remember the day I was talking with my roommate at the shelter, Tracy. I was a singer-songwriter, still am, and she is a writer. And we started talking about how supported we felt in our abuse support group and how amazing it was to tell our stories and feel validated. And we decided that we needed to write a song about it. So we walked down the hall to this little room that was about the size of a walk-in closet. And I had my keyboard there and we sat down, and for an hour and a half, we experienced the joy of songwriting. And we wrote about what we were experiencing. And I would love to share with you what we wrote in this music video. This is called Voices.
Never thought you'd find yourself locked away, forced to hide in the silence. Monsters just outside, waiting for the fight. So you swallow your pain and don't let it see the light. You try to find your voice, one breath at a time. Put sound to the words, but your pain is alive. There's power in that knowing. Once your story's heard, you can lift up your voice and sing it to the you'd find yourself surrounded by a band of sisters, sharing all the weight, bearing witness to your shame. You feel love and new hope through letting go of all the blame. We find our voices, one heartbeat at a time. No story is the same, yet our pain is alive. There's
to thank you for helping me lift my voice. And I want to leave you with a challenge. What is your story? And how will you share it with others? How will you lift your voice? Madam Toastmaster.
Well, we need to take 1 minute to give our feedback and evaluation to Jackie. I don't have a timer here, so Madam Timer, will you let us know when a minute is up? Thank you so much. And Jackie, thank you so much.
There's 1 minute, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. Well, our table topics master is Christina Stepper. Christina, what do you have to engage us this evening?
Hard act to follow. Good job, Jackie. I want to start by just talking about how I organize who I ask questions of for table topics. What I do after I prepare typed questions, as you can see, is when the meeting begins, I write the names of everyone who's attending across the top of the page. And then I assign each person a number from 1 to 4. A 1 is someone who does not have a speaking role at all. A 2 is someone with a minor speaking role, such as the counter or the timer or the grammarian, the president, if the president doesn't have any other role, the sergeant at arms. A 3 is the Toastmaster or the general evaluator. And a 4 is a speaker or an evaluator. That way I can look at my questions and craft assignment of questions first to the 1s, then to the 2s, then to the 3s. I don't know if that will be helpful to anyone, but it works for me and I wanted to share. It is 6:09. We only have time for a few questions. We have a number of 1s tonight. We'll start with those. Start with a tough one. Do you think the riots and unrest in Seattle, Portland, and other major cities are related to tensions from COVID lockdown? Lloyd?
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. No, I don't. I think they're more related to the situation in the Rolling Stones song, Street Fighting Man. It's summertime, the time is right for fighting in the streets. That's why we don't see many riots in December, say, as opposed to August. You know, nice weather, not too much going on, vacation days. Let's go smash up a Starbucks and advance the cause of racial justice somehow by doing that. So probably not. The COVID epidemic, though, had an influence, I think, on it because a lot of people are more or less trapped away from their normal social activities and whatnot. And that probably created a certain amount of not exactly tension, but frustration, boredom, that kind of thing. And going out in the street and breaking stuff is a pretty good way to get over that. You know, it's kind of like those rooms you used to be able to go into and smash up a computer with a baseball bat for a fee just to release your tensions. So in summary, no, I don't think that the COVID epidemic outbreak had a direct impact on that. I think it was just basically a summertime boredom activity. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Lloyd. If the social distancing mandates remain through the end of the year, how will it impact your normal holiday plans? Kathleen?
How will the social distancing affect my normal holiday plans? Lucky for me, I don't travel during the holidays. So I will have my sister-in-law visit. She's already announced that the flights are quite cheap. And so she will be joining us for the holidays. She's one that visits with us every Christmas. It'll be a relatively close group of family members. I don't think we'll quarantine her, at least as long as she's on her best behavior. We will give her some kitchen duties, peeling potatoes, mashing them, cleaning up the fallen ornaments from the tree. She will have those duties. The biggest difference probably for me would be in going to church. I'm used to going to church. It's the only time I can drag my family to church is on Christmas. I can usually drag them with me. I went to church though on Sunday for the first time. I was shocked that probably 60% of the people were not wearing masks. I left. I didn't even stay. I was so surprised by it. I'm unlikely, based on that experience, to go back again at the holidays. That will be a big difference for me, not to be able to go and enjoy that and take my kids to it and have that experience. Probably it will end up being an online experience. In summary, Christmas will be delightful. It always is. Whatever circumstance we face, we'll just make the best of it. Thank you, Madam Table Topics.
Thank you, Kathleen. We have time for one more. Dental services were limited to emergency-only visits for several months. Now that they've opened up again, how have the services changed, Eric?
Thank you, Table Topics Master. It's interesting because they're inventing it as they go. My dentist, when I first went in, his wife is a hygienist, and they had recently had a couple of kids, and so she was just working one day a week. But she's the one that did my cleaning because they were rotating people out, and some of them were working on the weekend, and this happened to be a Wednesday. So I got to know her. I knew her when she was on the soccer team of my daughter, so that was kind of a fun little experience. When I went, and usually we have it every 6 months, and the doctor informed me that they were going to try and get back on track so that they were going to give me an appointment in 3 months. When I went into 3 months, they had me make sure I wore a mask out in the waiting room, and nobody came into the waiting room. And when I went into the dentist chair, they had me swish this hydrogen peroxide, and I wore a mask until they started doing the thing. And she wore her mask the whole time. The dentist wore a mask the whole time. And when I went to leave, she said, "Oh, no, you got to go this way." So there was only one-way traffic. And it was pretty bizarre. But it was comforting that they were trying to do the right thing, and they were taking all these measures. And I'm happy to be a part of that. I'm happy to be part of the change because I don't want my teeth to fall out.
Thank you, Eric. That brings us to 6:15, which is the time we turn the meeting back to our Toastmaster. I will do that at this time. Thank you.
And as you have seen, I had my assistant Chloe with me. At the risk of appearing zoonotic, she, on the other hand, didn't have much to say. She just wanted to lick and be seen and say hello. It gives me great pleasure to turn over the agenda to the general evaluator, Joyce. Help us to get the feedback about our entire experience this evening.
Nothing zoonic about that. If honoriness was zoonic, I think I'd be in trouble. I have 4 cats. That explains my personality, I think, I hope, I pray. I finally have an excuse. I'll get serious. We are going to listen to Ron give his evaluation. Take it away, Ron.
I'm finding this being a bit of a challenge, evaluating a 20+ minute speech. That Jackie's speeches just continue to get better and better. I think everybody can agree with it and with that. And in this one, she generally knocked it out of the park. Jackie, I'm going to go over several things that I like about your speech. One, standing up, of course. We commented on that a month or so ago, that in these COVID times, being or standing up versus not certainly adds some value. I like the way you dressed too. Very professional. You look very nice with your hair done. I like your red lipstick, the dress that you're wearing, a little bit of jewelry. Just call it the cherry on top for the whole presentation. Your overall use of the nonverbal cues, the body language and vocal variety. At one point in the beginning, I think it's in your introduction, when you described how things fell apart and you whispered that, the volume, the range of use in your voice was excellent. The overall topic, of course, is something that's near and dear to you, and you've done a great job with your past presentations, and certainly this one, helping us live that. When you were describing at one point the anxiety of finding that tracker, and you showed reaching up underneath the seat to grab that bag and pulling it out and then getting your burner phone, which makes us think, yeah, why does she have that burner phone? Of course, she's to some degree in hiding. And it was like you were reliving that anxiety. And I think you're a generally strong woman. I don't think you were necessarily bothered by that as much as Rob was. You should have seen the look on his face. I don't think he was breathing there for a moment. I wasn't even sure that he was alive, but then he blinked. I felt good that I didn't have to stop your speech. The music video, transitioning into the music, I was a little bit concerned, I must admit, how that was going to play out, because your last presentation with the podcast, and I think it was Dean that reviewed that, it was a little bit clunky with just that screen from the podcast, but that video was excellent. The lyrics, the vocals were excellent, and the video, all the different pictures that went through. There was one that I saw, it was a whole lot of hands and fingers that were shaped in a heart that was just really cool. And for you to conclude that too, I liked how you concluded. I didn't know that you were going to do this. I thought you were just going to stop and go on with your presentation, but you stopped. And then of course you sang the last of the few lyrics very effectively. It was overall just fascinating. You effectively had the rest of us living that with you. I don't know that you could have done a better job. The only thing that I'm going to ask that you work on here in transitioning from your larger place in the States to the smaller place, the little flat that you're living in now, is your head was cut off in the picture a few times. And just try to figure out how you can do that to where, particularly when you stand, we can see all of you and as you're moving in and out. But man, excellent. I don't know how you continue to go up from here, but I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
I agree with a few points as well. If you don't mind, I would like to be a little flippant when I say, Mary, Mary, quite contrary. How did our timing go?
It's been a while since anyone's used Mary, Mary, quite contrary on me. I guess I have to start being more contrary, and then I'll hear that again. I kind of liked it. I wanted to just mention that in an effort to prevent myself from getting COVID butt, I'm not sure what it is, but I think I've got an idea. I take my dog for a walk every single day, and with respect to everyone else, I pick up after her in order to prevent any zoonotic pathogens from being released to other humans. I really had to use word of the day. All right, timing. Jackie, your speech was 23 minutes, 44 seconds. Lloyd, your table topics was 1 minute, 21 seconds. Kathleen, 2 minutes, 1 second. And Eric, 1 minute, 46 seconds. Ron, your evaluation was 4 minutes, 1 second. That's my report.
Thank you, Mary. I hope I did not offend you. Now we go to the counters report. Ian, how did we do?
How about the grammarian?
I am so sorry, Steve. I just got so caught up with that speech that my attention span, whatever's left of it, is gone. Steve?
I'm not offended.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
I think everyone who spoke did a fine job tonight. I thought communication was great, and Jackie's speech, you just really did a beautiful job of conveying your message. It was really well delivered in every respect. Your verbal communications, your physical nuances were huge. The fact that 3 people managed to squeak out the word of the day makes this a home run. That's the extent of my report. I think everyone did just fine. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, Ian, time for you to tell us how we did.
We did really, really well. Steve, thank you for jumping in right there. It gave me a chance to get a couple more on my list. Pat, 1 but, 1 and. You started a couple of sentences with well, and you had a so. Ron, your word tonight was you had 9 of those. You had 1 and, 1 You used the word instead of to a couple of times. You had an that you snuck in there really subtly. You had a couple of repetitions of, you, something I can't read my writing, and you had a repetition of the compound we can. Mary, a quick repetition right towards the end of your speech of I. Steve, use the word your right there in your last couple of sentences. The word is your, not your. And you had 1 repetition of I'm. Jackie, for the amount that you spoke, holy cow, I picked up 4 ands, and they were very late in the speech. Almost like you had kind of gotten really relaxed, and you started talking about your emotion. There's a repetition on my part. Your emotion changed when you started talking about this song that you had written with your friend, and it's almost as if you relaxed a little bit and you threw a bunch of ands in there pretty quick. Christina, clean. Lloyd, you had 5 uhs, 2 so's, 1 and a repetition of. Kathleen, one one and, one so. Eric, you had an 4 ands, and 2 so's. And that is my grammarian report for the night. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I think this meeting was really put together. We started on time. Everyone knew what to do. I pretended to know what to do. It was a really good meeting for everyone. And I called everybody by the right names. I may have skipped on the order. Sorry about that, Steve. But other than that, I think it was an amazing meeting. We are getting so much better at this every time that we get on here. That is my report, and I will switch this over to the president, I believe. Ian.
Thank you, Joyce. Nice job tonight. Nice job, everybody else who took part in the review process tonight. At this point, I'd like to know if Lloyd has any comments.
Yeah, 2 things. First of all, Ron, be sure you send in any checks you're holding for the electric toasters dues. Wednesday's the deadline on that, and it becomes very inconvenient beyond that date. Secondly, COVID butt is actually a real thing. It turns out that lots of people are eating more comfort food during the pandemic, and things like macaroni and cheese and that sort of stuff are very calorie dense. And so people tend to be picking up weight, and at the same time, they're not exercising as much because they're staying indoors. And so they get COVID butt. It's real. So, you know, there's your excuse if you're having an issue. Back to you, Ian.
Thanks, Lloyd. I definitely sympathize with the sympathy food or comfort food. I have eaten my fair share of microwave burritos and top ramen, cookies. I've managed to cut quite a few of those out of my diet recently. In fact, I dropped beer down from randomly throughout the week to just on Friday or Saturday nights. So that's helping. I know, shocker, isn't it, Rob? Anybody could do that, but I'm succeeding. At this point, I really thanks Lloyd for bringing up the fact that it's time to get our dues in. Anybody that wants to join the electric toasters, we could use a few more members if you'd like to join up a second club. I also have a bunch of responses that I sought from the electric toasters club members on what we should expect and how we should go about restarting a morning meeting. And I need to get a meeting scheduled. Vicki, I think I'll have to have your help with that to get a Zoom meeting going to discuss that option. So if anybody is really interested in starting up on a morning meeting with the electric toasters and what that might look like, there'll be more to come on that here shortly. Thank you. At this point, I would like to say ask if there's any other questions. Rob, I see your fingers up.
Mr. President, this